Welcome. My name is Derek Mosley. I'm the director of Marquette Law School's Lubar Center for Public Policy Research and Civic Education. And I want to welcome you to our Get to Know program. We started these types of programming in an attempt to try to bring people before you who affect your life every day that you don't have access to or have the ability to ask questions. And we are happy today to have the Chief Judge of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Jill Karofsky. Could you please welcome Jill?
Thank you.
And this is odd for me because Jill was my boss for 5 years while I got to interview Mary Trigiano's in the back, who was my boss, and Jill was my boss, and I had chemo in here. It's interesting to interview your boss, right? Right, you got the evaluation. So we're going to start with just a Q&A with myself and Jill, and then I'm going to open it up about 15 minutes or so left in the program for questions from the audience. But first question, you grew up in Middleton. Tell me about Middleton.
Well, first, thanks for having me here today. I really appreciate it. I was excited to get the invitation, as I said to you when we first got together today. Coming here and being able to be around the law students especially is just like a shot of inspiration in my arm. So thanks for having me. I grew up in Middleton, Wisconsin. In the 1970s, my mom was mayor of Middleton. She was one of the first female mayors in the state of Wisconsin. My dad was a local pediatrician, and he helped a lot of kids. I feel like almost every night there was someone who came to our front door because they needed like stitches in their arm or their head or something. And so my parents really instilled in me the importance of the community that I grew up in, the importance of serving the public. And I always had an eye towards public service from a super young age.
Was your mom your inspiration for that?
Very much so.
Okay. Now, I know you as an athlete. I've always known you as an athlete. But I didn't know that you were state tennis champ in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I was. In doubles, I had a really good partner.
So why law school?
As I said, I knew I wanted to pursue a career in public service, and it seemed like the best way to be able to do that was to go to law school. I viewed law at that time, and I still do, as a vehicle to change. And I encourage anyone who asks me whether or not they should go to law school, I tell them to do it. And I think right now especially, and I'm especially speaking to the law students in this room, we need good lawyers in this country right now more than we ever have before. So thank you for stepping up.
While you were in law school, what was your favorite class? Doesn't have to necessarily be the class that you did the best in.
Yes, so I was living in Washington, D.C. in the summer of 1989, and I really wanted to go to law school in Washington, D.C. I had been waitlisted at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and at the very end of August, I got a phone call from the UW-Madison Law School. They said, we have one more opening in our class. Someone who is going to enroll has decided not to. You have 24 hours to enroll. I was the last person admitted to my law school class in 1989. And I'm going to be honest. I didn't love law school all that much. I struggled through my first semester. After the first year, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, if I wanted to continue, and I decided to enroll in the La Follette School of Public Affairs, so I was able to do a dual degree program and get my master's degree. And that really worked out well for me because I feel like law school was a little more esoteric and the public policy program was a little more hands-on. And in the work as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, where I'm in charge of administering an entire branch of government, a lot of the lessons I learned at La Follette are lessons I look to today. As far as my favorite class, I really enjoyed the classes I took in criminal law and constitutional law.
And so you graduate from law school. What's your first job out of law school?
The Dane County DA's office.
And what did you do there?
I was a prosecutor in the Dane County DA's office. I really specialized in cases where women and children were crime victims.
How long were you in the DA's office?
9, 10 years.
And you did most of the time that you were in the DA's office, it was mostly, you did a lot of domestic violence work. I know that's how I actually had first encounter with you.
Yes, yeah. For a while, I was the head of the domestic violence unit. At one time in the office, I had more child abuse and child sexual assault cases than anyone in the office. I was really steeped in cases where uh, I was able to tell the stories of women and children who had suffered abuse and violence and neglect. And I think that's part of being a lawyer, right? Part of being a lawyer, a huge part, is we're storytellers. And it is a huge responsibility and an incredible privilege to be able to tell the story of another human being. And I feel like my 10 years in the district attorney's office was doing that work.
But you left.
I did.
Where'd you go?
I went to a place called the National Conference of Bar Examiners. For any of you who are going to take a bar exam in the room, that's the organization that writes the bar exam. I loved being in the DA's office. To this day, being an assistant DA was probably my favorite job that I ever had.
I agree with you. I agree.
It was great.
It was.
And I know you shared an office with many of people you're still friends with. You were like in a bullpen type situation.
Oh, yeah.
And it was similar to me. I mean, being part of that bigger mission.
We had one office, 7 lawyers, 1 phone.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
No, this was before like press 1 for this one, press 2.
Oh, yeah, no,
you were
yeah,
just
no,
hold
yeah,
on a
yeah.
minute. Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's like a scene that a sitcom is made of.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so you helped design the bar exam, correct?
Yeah, well, I was the general counsel. I needed to be able to work part-time. I had my daughter, and then my son was born, and it was a lot to juggle the work of being in the DA's office. Quite honestly, there's a lot of trauma that walks through the door of a district attorney's office, and there's a lot of vicarious trauma. And I don't know about you, but back in the 90s when I was working in the DA's office, we weren't talking about trauma or vicarious trauma. You just carried on and did the work, and I realized how much it was impacting me. So I needed to step away. I needed to be able to work part-time, and the National Conference of Bar Examiners was a good fit for me at that time.
But then the prosecutors pulled you back in.
Kind of.
Where'd you go after that?
Yeah, so in 2010, there was a posting at the Wisconsin Department of Justice. There was a brand new position funded with VAWA dollars, Violence Against Women Act funding. And the position was a Violence Against Women resource prosecutor. The idea was you would put a experienced prosecutor in Madison, and that prosecutor would help prosecutors throughout the entire state prosecute crimes of domestic violence, sexual assault, strangulation, and stalking. And I applied for that job, and I was hired.
How long did you do that?
I did that for a year. And after a year, so at that time, J.B. Van Hollen was the Attorney General, and J.B. Van Hollen and I, we don't always agree politically. And I told him at my interview with him that I was never going to vote for him, but that the issues that I was being hired to work on, the issues of helping women stay safe, were issues that transcended politics. And he hired me. So I did that job for almost a year, and then he promoted me to be the head of the Office of Crime Victim Services. The Office of Crime Victim Services is one of the 5 offices in the Department of Justice, one of the 5 departments, if you will. And we helped victims in every single corner of the state get the support and the services that they need as their case is working its way through the criminal justice system.
How long did you do that?
I did that for 6 years.
But then?
Right, I was having a hard time keeping a job, as you can see. I'm realizing now.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But why the Supreme Court?
Well, I stopped off at the circuit court.
Why the Circuit Court? I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm in Circuit Court, yeah.
In 2017, I ran for circuit court judge in Dane County. I loved being at the Department of Justice. I sat on probably 10 different committees or commissions that were statewide. We were helping protect kids. We were helping protect women. And I loved the policy work. And yet I still missed being in the courtroom and doing the individual work that happens when you are either presiding over or in my case, in my career, prosecuting individual cases. So I decided to run for circuit court in Dane County, and I won in April of 2017.
And while you're on the bench, circuit court bench in Dane County, you were mostly on a criminal rotation, right?
Yeah, I was in Dane County, you're either in a criminal rotation, the civil rotation, or the juvenile rotation. I was in the criminal rotation. I would have 1,700 pending cases at any one time. It was very high volume. I basically would get like 5 new cases every day of the year on average.
How'd you like that?
It was amazing. I mean, it was incredible to be on the bench. It was a big change. I went from being at the Department of Justice, where I had over 730 or 740 colleagues, to suddenly having 16. My colleagues in Dane County were amazing. I learned a lot from being on the bench. I was able to draw a lot of lessons from the work I had done, being a prosecutor and being a victim advocate. I mean, never forgetting that every case that comes before you involves real people, and that so much can happen in a courtroom. If I were to ask law students up there, where do you think judges have the most discretion? 99.9% of the time, but law students and lawyers will say sentencing, right? And that's usually the answer that you get. And I would push back on that. I think the place where a judge has the most discretion is when it comes to how that judge treats people in their courtroom and how they make sure other people treat the people in their courtroom. That is where you have the most discretion. And making sure that everyone in that courtroom was treated with fairness and dignity and respect and empathy was something that I tried to do every single day I sat on the bench.
How long were you on the circuit bench?
3 years.
Okay. Then why the move to the Supreme Court?
So in the spring of 2019, I decided to run for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I looked at the Supreme Court. I looked at the person who had been appointed, had served on the court for a few years, and I thought that, quite honestly, that and I said this in the campaign, that he had been corrupt, that he had only ruled for one side every single opportunity he had. I thought the people of the state of Wisconsin deserved better on their court. So I ran for Supreme Court. My election was the 2020 COVID election. It was on April 7th of 2020. We were the first state, if you will remember, to have an election. A lot of the other states had postponed their elections, but not in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, we held an election. Where we are right now in Milwaukee, they usually have 182 voting sites. On April 7th of 2020, they had 5. Yeah, it was incredible. Weather worked in our favor. It was a warm day. So people were okay waiting outside. People had been quarantining for a while, so they were excited to be outside, being able to converse with their friends. And I think they were angry. I think the Wisconsin Supreme Court the day before had the opportunity to move the election, to do what the governor had asked and move the election, and they decided not to. And I think people in that moment were able to understand the significance of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Sometimes it is hard to connect the dots of what does the court do and how does it impact you, but in that moment, in that decision, everyone felt it, because suddenly they had to make a decision between exercising their right to vote or keeping themselves and their friends and their families safe. And that was just it was an untenuous decision for people to have to make.
And now you're the Chief Justice. And so could you tell us, what's the responsibilities of the Chief Justice on the Supreme Court?
So I was elected Chief Justice. I began on July 1st of 2025. And for many, many years, the Chief Justice was the most senior member on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. In 2015, there was a constitutional amendment that was passed that said the members of the Supreme Court get to choose their Chief Justice. And my colleagues chose me to be Chief Justice in the spring, with the term starting in July. I think what a lot of people don't realize about the Wisconsin Supreme Court is something I mentioned a little while ago. We are responsible for running an entire branch of government. So there are municipal court judges in this state and circuit court judges in this state, Court of Appeals judges in this state, and 7 justices. That all is totals hundreds of people. And all those judges and justices don't work in silos, right? There are court reporters and there are interpreters. The Supreme Court is in charge of figuring out who should be, what the rules should be, where the bar should be, if you will, for who can become an attorney in this state. We oversee the Board of Bar Examiners. We oversee the Office of Lawyer Regulation, which regulates lawyers. If a judge gets in trouble, we get the complaint from the Judicial Commission. We have to figure out if we should impose discipline and what discipline should be imposed. We are in charge of the state law libraries. There's a main law library and 2 satellite law libraries. And if Justice Ann Walsh Bradley were here, she just retired, but if Justice Ann Walsh Bradley were here, this is what she would say. And the crown jewel, some of you know her, right? The crown jewel of the Wisconsin court system is CCAP. You can be anywhere in this state, anywhere in this country, anywhere in the world. And if you have a computer or your phone, you can find out what is happening in any courtroom, just about any courtroom in this state. And it's incredible if you think about accessibility and transparency. So we are responsible for all of those things.
I forgot to mention this. So you probably have the most unique swearing in ceremony for a Supreme Court justice. Do you want to tell that story?
Sure, I'm happy to, and I even have a prop over here. In 2020, I won my election in April, and I was planning to run a 100-mile race in August. It was something I had wanted to do the year before, but my campaign team wouldn't let me because I was in the middle of a campaign, and they didn't want me to miss a weekend of campaigning. But COVID had hit, and the race shut down. But my friend and the race director, Scotty Coomer, who happened to be with us today, a fellow lawyer, the course was still open, and I got in touch with him, and he said, "Look, you can do it yourself. Just do it yourself 100-mile race." So I ran from Orangeville, Illinois, to a place called Dot's Tavern in Bosco, Wisconsin, which was 35 miles, and I got sworn in outside. It took about 2 hours, and then I got back on the course, and I ran 65 more miles. And from start to finish, it took me 34 hours and 15 minutes, and I was a Supreme Court justice.
That is just...
So, when I hear about these guys like filibustering on the floor of the Senate for 24 hours, I'm like, go be on your feet for 34. That's easy.
Now, when you were elected to the Supreme Court, that election broke all records, and it was $10 million were spent in that election, and everybody was like, $10 million for a judicial election. Our last election was $100 million, right? So you tell me, with all this money coming, how do you feel about all this money coming into our elections, our judicial elections?
Yeah, look, I don't like it. Nobody likes it. No one in this room likes it. Right? Raise your hand. No one likes it. Right? No one in the state likes it. No one in the country likes it. But I think we need to be really cognizant of how we got to the place that we are in. And in order to do that, you need to trace it all the way back to where this started, which is 2010. The U.S. Supreme Court, the Citizens United decision, gave corporations, gave outside groups undue influence in our elections. And then it was exacerbated in 2015 when Governor Walker signed into law a bill that said that in Wisconsin you can have unlimited contributions to the political parties. I'm not in the legislature, I'm not in Congress, and I don't sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. If we want to change those things, we need to go back and change it through those avenues. But I don't like it either.
So all across the country right now, there's been threats against local judges, state judges, federal judges. In fact, in Wisconsin, Judge Romer in Juneau County was murdered for doing his job. And you yourself were a victim of stalking. So what can we do about, or what can the court do? What do you want to do about this political violence that's going on, not only in our state, but overall?
Yeah, I mean, we should not be under any illusion here. Political violence in the United States is going the wrong direction. It is on the rise. I knew Jack Romer. I was at Jack Romer's funeral. I sat three people down from his kids as they presented them a folded up American flag. I just, in January, an individual was convicted for stalking me. I have had police officers after the 2020 election, when we heard the case of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, I had police officers outside my house for many days protecting me. The threats I got were misogynistic, they were anti-Semitic. I've had to increase my security. I have security with me today. It's unacceptable. It is unacceptable. I worry every day about the judges and the justices in this state, but I also worry about every single person who comes in contact with the justice system, because everyone deserves to be safe when they interact with the justice system. That means jurors, that means victims, that means witnesses, that means all court staff. It means every single person who comes in contact. Right now, we have 4 officers in the state who are dedicated to provide security for the entire Wisconsin judiciary. You're right, I know. We're doing our best to make sure that that funding continues through the end of this biennium and into the next biennium. That should be the absolute floor, right? We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of judges. I also need to say this, that it is completely unacceptable for the President of the United States to be publicly attacking judges and justices for doing their jobs. It is unacceptable. Disagree with the opinions and the decisions all you want, right? That's democracy. But attacking judges and justices for making their decisions, putting their lives on the line, that is about as undemocratic as you can get.
You said something last year in your State of the Judiciary address. You said, I don't come and tell you this with any excitement, but the state of the judiciary is troubled. What did you mean by that when you said that?
I think when you are trying to work in conditions where you are fearful for your security and the security of the people you work with and the security of your families, that is a really, really difficult time, right? That's a difficult and hard time to do this work. I also think that there are people in this country who are trying to undermine the work of the judiciary, right? I mean, look, let's face it, political violence is on the rise. We are more polarized than we have been certainly in my lifetime. And it's times like these that people really look to the court system. They look to the court system to enforce their rights, to protect their liberties. And when they come to the court system looking for justice, we got to make sure that they're able to find it. And the way that we do that is to make sure that people have confidence in the legitimacy of the court system. And we do that by rooting our decisions in the rule of law. In the rule of law. And we do that by treating every single person that comes in contact with the system with fairness and dignity and respect and with empathy.
So that brings me to a follow-up. What is the current state of the rule of law right now, in your opinion?
I think that there are judges and justices in this country who are accessing an incredible level of courage. I think in many ways the judiciary is the bulwark protecting our democracy in this country. But I do worry when the President of the United States is criticizing individual justices, for instance, like after the decision that came out in the tariffs case. That concerns me greatly. And we have to do everything that we can as individuals, as professionals, as groups of people to realize that that is happening and to push back against it.
And ultimately, doesn't that affect the trust and confidence the community has in the judiciary as well?
I think that it can. That's why I think it's really, really important that when judges and justices make decisions, they explain those decisions, right? And they show the law that they were following and that they treat people fairly who come before them.
Now, the Wisconsin Supreme Court has had a history sort of being ultra polarized. But every time I see you talk about this, you fight back on that. You talk about the decisions that come through that court.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there is a narrative out there that we are a court that is completely divided all the time. And I think I'll push back on that in a couple of ways. I'll start, first of all, with our decisions. If you look at our decisions from the last 2 years, if we were polarized along these ideological lines, you would imagine that most, all of our decisions would be 4-3. That's just not how the numbers shake out. If you look at the numbers from the last 2 years in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, we are far more likely to end up in a decision that is 7-0, 6-1, or 5-2 than we are 4-3. I mean, I will tell you that I personally have had meals with my colleagues. I've played in sporting events with my colleagues as my partner. Again, I had to ask one to be my doubles partner. She's really good. We we've been to the wedding of a justice together. We have been at funerals of justices' family members together. We Venmo each other when someone needs to send flowers. They don't. Not everyone Venmos, but we're getting there. Most of them Venmo. So when I hear this narrative about it's 4-3, it's 4-3, it's 4-3, that's just not the world that I live in.
I asked you before when we were talking, what's the thing that surprises you the most? Because we talked about being in the DA's office and working with different people. What surprises you the most about being on the Supreme Court as a justice?
Yeah, and I think I alluded to this a little bit before. When I was in the DA's office, I was working around all these people, and then I ended up at the Department of Justice with 700 colleagues, and then on the Dane County bench with 16 colleagues. Now I have 6 colleagues. It gets smaller, and it gets more isolating.
Now, when you are on the campaign trail, and also now, you often talk about recusal and the recusal rules that when you're campaigning, you were talking about, I want to go there and address the recusal rules. What about the recusal rules give you concern or pause?
Yeah, so I just want to step back to make sure. I just want to tee this up to make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about. Right? One of the foundations of the American judicial system is that we want judges who are not going to have their thumb on the scale of justice, right? And so when we talk about recusal means that there is a situation where a judge might have a conflict in a case where it might appear that the judge has a conflict in a case. And in Wisconsin, each individual judge or justice gets to decide whether or not they have a conflict or they appear to have a conflict. They get to decide that for themselves. So sometimes the issues are really easy. If you and my son get into a car accident and there's a lawsuit and that case comes before me, I shouldn't sit on that case, right? I love you.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Right.
But, right, it for sure would not have the appearance of being fair, right? It gets a little more complicated though when you start to think about how money is involved. If you and my friend Scotty get into a car accident, and Scotty has lent me $100 in the morning, it's hypothetically Scotty, but it doesn't have anything to do with the case. Like, I don't know. It gets even more complicated when you think about campaign contributions coming in. Someone contributes to my campaign, an individual, an entity, an attorney, and then several months later, they appear in front of me. In 2010, the Wisconsin Supreme Court was presented with a rule, and the rule came from 2 entities that were the biggest backers of conservative justices. And part of what that rule said was that a judge or justice shall not be required to recuse solely because of campaign donations. A judge or justice shall not be required to recuse solely because of campaign contributions. We're an outlier with that rule. In 2017, a group of retired judges came before the Supreme Court and they said, look, Supreme Court, we think you really need to look at that rule. Is that really the rule that you want? And generally, when we get a rule petition in front of us, we hold a hearing and we say, come on into the Supreme Court hearing room. Tell us what you think about this proposed rule. In 2017, the court did not even allow that proposal to have a hearing. They, in essence, slammed shut the doors of the Supreme Court. So now we're in 2026, and we have a rule petition before us to look at this rule. And we are going to have a rule hearing before our term ends the end of June. We are going to have a rule hearing, but by the end of the term, by this spring. And it is my hope and my desire and my plan that we will work together to craft a rule that is best for the people of the state.
All right, so let's talk about some issues that are affecting Wisconsin alone, or maybe other places, but just talk about Wisconsin. So you mentioned that one of the things that the Wisconsin Supreme Court overlooks are the interpreters. And I know qualified interpreters are a problem. What do you hope to do with the lack of qualified interpreters in the state?
Yeah, it's a huge problem, right? If you come to, I mean, the law is really complicated when you speak English and everyone is speaking English. I cannot imagine what it is like if English is not your first language and you are walking into a courtroom. So we need good qualified interpreters to make sure that everyone is getting a fair hearing and that everyone understands what is happening in the courtroom, right? If you don't understand it, it just doesn't matter. So we do have a shortage of qualified interpreters. It's really, really hard to have the bar for interpreters is super high because we want really qualified people. So the director of state courts, Judge Audrey Karofsky, has put together a working group to figure out how we can tackle this problem. We're not the only state that's facing this problem. We want to make sure that the interpreters are paid fairly. We want to make sure that we can get more interpreters into the system. And we want to make sure that the people who need interpreters are getting the assistance that they need.
Another issue were attorneys in rural areas of the state.
Yeah, we have a crisis here for all you law students. We really need people and lawyers, quite frankly. We really need more attorneys in the rural areas of our state. We have places where it is, especially at a crisis level when you think about criminal cases, and someone might sit in jail for weeks or months because the system, that's what I mean by we, are unable to find someone to represent that individual. That is not right, and that is not fair. So Justice Ziegler, when she was Chief Justice, her picture's back there, she put together an attorney recruitment and retention committee. Dean Kearney sat on that committee. Dean Tokaji from the UW Law School. We had a number of individuals from the State Bar and other groups sit on that committee. We came up with a list of ideas. One of the things that was on the list of ideas would make it easier to transfer bar exam scores from out of state to Wisconsin. We're having a hearing on that next week. But there are a lot of ideas. I think this is a problem where there's not going to be one great idea. We're going to have to do absolutely everything we can to move the needle a little bit. And I'll just say that Justice Hagedorn has taken over heading up that committee on behalf of the court.
I watched this interview of you, and I just want to know if you will just say what you said during this interview.
Oh God.
So in this interview, the interviewer asked you, there's 6 of the 7 justices are women. Don't you think that that's a little unfair? Could you relay what you responded to?
Like, oh, you said it that way, so the question's not
a little bit different. I know.
I have a friend who has a question. So right now at the state of Wisconsin, on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, we have the highest percentage of female justices of any state any state Supreme Court in the country. Okay? So I often get the question, how many do you need? Right? And so I think about the Supreme Court hearing room, and I don't know how many of you have been in the Supreme Court hearing room. It is a museum quality room. And in that room hang 4 gorgeous murals that tell the story of the foundation of law in the state of Wisconsin. And the mural that's on the back wall, it's the mural that I get to see from the bench most of the time. And they tell a story chronologically. The mural on the back wall is a depiction of Caesar Augustus lying down on a divan. And he is acting as the defense attorney to a soldier who is also in the picture. And the story is that the soldier said to the Caesar, I went to fight for war. I went to war and fought for you. The least you could do is represent me. And we don't know what happened in the trial, but I think if Caesar Augustus is your defense attorney, you're going to get acquitted.
You're going to do all right.
Yeah. So we want to, it's in there as a recognition to the Romans who had a civil law system. They wrote down their laws so everyone knew what it was. If you go to the wall that's over here, it would be to your left if you're sitting in the room, or to my right. It's a picture of King John signing the Magna Carta, right? And there are things in the Magna Carta that was signed in 1512 that we still rely on today, the right to habeas corpus, the right to a jury trial. And in that picture, you can see that there are soldiers. The king clearly doesn't want to sign the Magna Carta because he doesn't want to lose power, but these soldiers are gonna make him sign it, and we know that he does. Behind me on the bench, and what you see when you're sitting in the room, is the signing of the United States Constitution. And you can see James Madison and Ben Franklin and George Washington. Thomas Jefferson is there, even though he was in France, not in Philadelphia when they signed the Constitution. We're just gonna let that go. But of course, the Constitution is hugely important for the work of the court system and of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The last picture that's on the wall over here also depicts a trial. And in this picture, you have a judge, Judge Doty, who is presiding over the trial of Chief Oshkosh of the Menominee tribe. And the judge has to decide if he is going to use tribal law or territorial law. He uses tribal law, and under tribal law, the chief is acquitted. And the two men, the judge and the chief, become lifelong friends after that. And of course, our Constitution, we became a state in 1848. Our Constitution was ratified in 1848. We do not have a new Constitution in this state. We have had many, many amendments, but we still rely on many of the foundations from territorial Wisconsin. If you look at those 4 murals, you know what you don't see? A single woman. I counted. There are over 80 men depicted in those 4 murals, and not a single woman. It is almost as if, in the history of the world, in the history of the United States of America, in the history of the state of Wisconsin, women either didn't exist or didn't matter. So do I have a problem if someday we have 7 women on the Wisconsin Supreme Court? No.
So let's talk about that for a second. So let's talk about how we choose judges. Are you happy with our current system where we elect judges, or do you think we should go to appointments, or do you think we should do some type of hybrid of both?
So in that Constitution in 1848, one of the things that they said is that judges and justices in Wisconsin will be elected by the people. I mean, back then it was landholding white men. So we've made some progress, right? But the point is that judges and justices would be beholden to the people. If they're not elected by the people, then we are having judges and justices selected by political elites. And I think that it is really important that when I am running for justice, when my friends are running for judge, that they are out in the community shaking hands with people, finding out what they think is working in their justice system, understanding what isn't working in the justice system, and making the best case for why they should be on the bench, making these important, vitally important decisions on behalf of individuals of the state of Wisconsin.
You always hear this as well, and I want to know where you stand on it. Recently, it's been this push to kick judges off the bench once they reach a certain age. How do you feel as Chief Justice about that?
Yeah, I will just tell you, those always baffle me. And they're like at 70 or 75 sometimes. I mean, I know people who are 80, 85 who are super, super sharp. And I know people in their 30s and 40s who aren't all that sharp. So I'm not, like, I don't understand. I don't understand. I think the voters, look, we have a really, really sophisticated electorate in Wisconsin. Right? We do. I mean, they are involved. They figure out who the candidates are. They do a lot of research. So I think we should let the voters decide, not some random number.
So there's a lot of things that the Supreme Court does that a lot of people aren't aware of. Can you talk to us a little bit about this Court on the Move program?
Yes, Justice on Wheels.
Justice on Wheels,
Yeah.
yes.
Court on the Move.
I like Court on the Move.
I do too. Yeah, so I think one of the important things about the Wisconsin Supreme Court, the judicial system in general, is that we need to make it as accessible and transparent as we possibly can. This is your court system. It's part of the reason I decided I wanted to see you. But the other reason I came here today is because I want to be as transparent and as accessible as I can possibly be. I think that's important for all of you. So what the Supreme Court has done historically, we had a couple years off, is we have taken the court to a community. And last fall, we took the court to the community of Richland Center, and we held 2 oral arguments there. We had over 100 students, local students from local schools who joined us. We had dinner with the local bar association, and we're gonna come here. Yeah,
I haven't told
yes.
Joe yet. We're trying to.
That is my what I would like to do is it would be great if we could get Justice on Wheels to come to Marquette Law School, to get out to, I know the University of Wisconsin Law School is close to where we sit, but I think it is different when you actually go to the law schools. So it's something that I am committed to working towards. Okay, Dean? Okay, thumbs up. Wow, we're really surprised.
Thank you.
Wait till you hear what's coming next.
So there's law students that are in the audience. Is there something that you would like them to know as the Chief Justice?
I said it once, and I think it bears me saying it again. We are at a pivotal time in our democracy. And this is a time when the law can really be used as a vehicle to protect the rights of people in our communities, and it can be used as a vehicle to change things that aren't working for people. I think you are learning how to be lawyers here, and graduating with your law degree is going to give you incredible power and the incredible opportunity to make a difference in this world at a time when we need it most.
Yeah, perfect. Oh, you can clap. Go ahead. I saw you get ready to clap. You are so right. I think about it all the time. I remember when I graduated and we were in the chambers that you just mentioned, being sworn in, and my grandmother was there and she was in tears. And this is a woman who never went to school. She was the help her whole entire life. And for her to see me graduate was just everything. And so it's a tremendous opportunity that we have to effectuate change.
Absolutely.
Now, you've answered the questions that I've had to ask, so I wanted to open it up for our audience. Does anybody have any questions for the Chief Justice? Oh, yep, we're gonna get you a mic real quick, man.
Sorry, you were the complete opposite corner from around us.
Chief Justice, my name's Matt Falk. I was at the Bar Association during your campaign, and I want to bring you back to your debate with then Justice Kelly. And he said something to you during that debate in front of everybody that really impacted me. He said you disgusted him. I don't know if you remember that.
It's hard to forget.
Yeah, and he was spitting at the time, and I never, for many of you who have been part of debates, I felt it was a sea change. I'd never heard a debate where we had individuals at the highest levels talking to one another like that, and I felt like it was at a low point. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that campaign, because people supported that type of rhetoric, and his speech following his loss was one of the worst things I've ever heard as a lawyer. And I'm wondering if you could speak to the impact of that as to the hurdle that you had to overcome just to get your voice heard over that type of rhetoric, and how we can do a better job as members of the legal community to really empower voters to really understand what their vote means and how they evaluate what it is that you actually do.
Yeah, thanks for those questions, Matt. Just the speech that he gave after the election was actually after Justice Protasewicz election. Just to be clear, mine was the COVID election, and he called me on the phone, but no one gave speeches. I enjoyed a bottle of champagne on my driveway. I didn't, not the whole thing. My kids were there. But to your point, okay, I was running against an incumbent justice. I will tell you this, I didn't know until the day after my election that only 2 times in my lifetime had an incumbent justice been defeated. Right? Those odds are terrible. I'm kind of glad I didn't know it, but I didn't. I think it is important to understand not just what someone says, but who they really are. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes in campaigns, you can catch a glimmer of who someone really is. And you need to look for that. What their background is and what their resume says is one thing, but how they act, Matt, I've said it a couple times already. I don't think there's anything more important for someone who's taking the bench. Actually, I don't think there's anything more important for someone practicing law than to treat people with respect. And he wasn't willing, he showed in that instance that he was incapable of doing that.
Hello. Thank you for being here. It's just really informative. Is this on?
It is.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I have a question about, what's going on with the Supreme Court justice and how our president is just saying awful, degrading things because of the decision they made. And you said we have to fight or push back. You didn't say fight. You said we have to push back on that. And I'm wondering, how do I push back? Because it's very disturbing and it's scary. So I don't know how to push back, being just, a Wisconsin citizen, regular old person.
I think that's a really good question. And it's a question I get asked all the time. Like, what can I do? And this answer might be frustrating, but do something. Do anything. Write a letter, talk to your friends, stay informed, join the political campaign of a candidate that you think will help to transform things. You get involved in a nonprofit. See where you can volunteer. How can you help people who really need our help right now? And there are lots and lots of things that you can do. And as an individual, it sometimes doesn't always seem all that gratifying because you can't see the needle being moved. I'm here to tell you that we are all in this together. We all have to fight for our democracy together. And we just all have to do whatever it is, whatever thing we are able to do that moment of that day, that'll make a little bit of difference. Making a difference in someone, we saw, there were people in Minneapolis who were bringing lunches and meals and helping people get rides and things like that. I mean, there are little things that you can do no matter where you are to help individual people in your community. I hope that's a satisfactory answer. Yeah.
I have a question to ask, and this comes from Charles Franklin, the director of our Marquette Law Poll.
I know Charles.
I know you do. Charles said he wished he could be here. He had a dental emergency and he couldn't make it. But
Oh, geez.
so
Might be TMI.
no, he told me to tell you.
Oh, okay. Well, everybody?
And everybody, yeah. But that being said, in our poll, the electorate wants to know from judges, where they stand on certain issues, and we know we have Supreme Court rules that prevent judges from saying certain things. What can a judge do, or what do you say to those people who want to know more about those candidates who are running for judge?
Yeah, good for you. Like I said, the Wisconsin electorate is sophisticated and they ask tough questions, and they should. What a judge and justice cannot do is say, if you ask me a question about issue X, I can't tell you how I will rule on that case should that issue come before me. Or if that issue is before me right now, I can't tell you what I'm going to do. But can I tell you what my values are? Can I tell you what I believe in? Can I tell you what I have done in my life prior to becoming a candidate? Can I share all those things with you so you can figure out, going back to your question, Matt, what kind of person am I? Who do I stand up for? Who am I willing to fight for? What do I believe in? That you should be able to ask those questions. You should expect, in my opinion, you should expect answers to those questions. You deserve to know who these people really are.
I just have a comment. With the Supreme Court, so many of them are Catholic. And Marquette University, at one point at least, was Catholic. I don't know how Catholic everything is these days, but it really pisses me off that those justices are all Catholic and they're making such horrible decisions for our country.
You want to go, Washington?
Thank you. My question is about media coverage. Voters are, of course, all influenced by media coverage. And as we know, coverage varies in its degree of accuracy and impartiality. I wouldn't ask you to name those you think are terrible, but can you name any that you think are outstanding? Any sources, media sources, any credible news sources that you would recommend that voters pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I would say is go right to the source. I mean, in Wisconsin, you do have access to your courtrooms. I have made sure that on the Supreme Court, there is an entity called Wisconsin Eye that has been up at the state capitol providing live streaming, and then they also archive what happens in all three branches of Wisconsin government. They have gone down. And so in the court, we hired an outside organization to come in and make sure that our oral arguments and our hearings continue to be live streamed and continue to be archived. So I think the most important thing is make sure that you are going to the source. Other than that, I think that, there's the, I don't know if you had teenage children, but I think about trust and verify, right? If you read something and it looks trustworthy, see if you can verify it. And I think, that's one way to try to get at the right answer. What's really happening?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so my name's Chloe. I'm a 2L here, and anyone that knows me knows my whole life I was planning on running for office. That was my goal. I ran a campaign in 2020, and to me, I received death threats. I was run off the road by a truck of people with red hats. I was in fear of my safety. So for you, you've been through a lot. How do you make this worth it? Like, for me, I'm like, okay, I'll just go be a transactional lawyer, which no offense to transactional lawyers, I don't have to like cry over my job. But like, how do you make it worth it for people in law school now to want to become leadership positions like you have?
Yeah. I'm thinking back to the question you asked me about the biggest surprise.
Yeah.
And I think that I'd have to put also to the top of the list have been the threats to my security and the security of my kids. My kids are out of the house now. We're asking a lot of public officials right now. We really, really are. And I mean it when I say that there are judges and justices in this state and in this country who have had to access a level of courage that judges and justices in this country have not had to access in quite a while. And I do think about that, and I think about it in the context of my kids all the time. I really do. I also think about my job, and I don't know a better way to describe it, and I know this sounds cliche. It is an honor and a privilege to sit on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. My office is in the Wisconsin State Capitol. When I walk into that building, I only go up the grand staircase, and Kyle, who's here on my security detail, will tell you that. And in that building, it's 31 steps up the first flight and then 32 up the second. Why, I don't know, but it is. Every time I go into that building, I try to find something in the artwork that I have not noticed before. And I think I will be able to do that until I am done walking to that Capitol every day. To be able to do this work on behalf of the people of the state, to be able to do this work at a time when I really believe we need the justice system working the best that it can possibly work, to be able to be in a position to effectuate change and to be a leader at this time, is something right now, as I'm sitting here today, that trade-off is worth it. Will it always be? I don't know. But today it is. It's a really good question.
I'd be very interested in your perspective on one of the greatest threats I think that we are facing, and that's the federal government taking over the fall elections in the states. Can you offer any insight into what you think may happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more important to our democracy than having free and fair elections. There's nothing more important in our democracy than free and fair elections. So we all need to be very wide-eyed as we are entering this election season. We need to, if something looks wrong, we need to be able to speak about it. We need to, again, and this goes to your question about what can you do? You can volunteer at the polls, right? You can be a poll watcher. You can help people register to vote. There are lots of things around the election you can do without getting involved in a campaign if you don't want to do that. But we all need to do whatever we have time and energy to do to make sure that every election we have in this state and in this country is free and fair.
Madam Chief Justice, thank you for being here today. I have two questions. My first question being, the Supreme Court, your court has taken less cases the last few years than in the past. I wanted to know if you had any insight on why that was the case. My second question then is, as soon-to-be young attorneys around me, what are a few things that you see at the Supreme Court that you like that young advocates do in front of you and your colleagues? Thank you.
Yeah, so the numbers thing, so it used to be like, before even I got on the court, the way that cases come to us is if someone loses in the Court of Appeals, they can file a petition for review and ask us to take their case. Our petitions for review, the requests that we get, have been down the past couple of years. I'm not sure exactly why that is. We have a number of theories, and we're looking into it. But it's my hope that those will start to tick up, and we will start to have some more cases. We've had some personnel changes that we're working through as well. But I'm mindful of the numbers. I do think we're gonna start to see it tick up, hopefully next term a little bit. Your second question is, for the younger colleagues, what do I like when an attorney? Was that the question?
Yeah,
What,
young attorneys that come into court, what do your
yeah.
colleagues like to see? And
Yeah, so if you have a case in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, right? You filed your petition for review. We've said we're going to take your case. We ask you to file briefs. I don't know why they're called briefs, because they're long. Just gonna say it. And then you come in one morning and we're up on high, and you stand down below in the well, and you got to argue your case in front of 7 overly caffeinated Supreme Court justices. That's scary. I wouldn't want to do it, and I know them. So I think the first thing is to realize that, yeah, I mean, anyone would be intimidating standing in front of 7 of any people when they're up on high wearing black, and you're down here. That's okay. The things that work well for me may not be things that work well for my colleagues. I'll just tell you that in briefs and in law school, I love tables of contents. I love maps and tables. I want to know where I've been, where I am, and where I'm going. You cannot have enough roadmaps in your brief for me. I love it. That's what works for me. I think for oral arguments, we've tried as a court this term to give the litigants 2 to 3 minutes on the front end to lay out what you're going to say. I think to stand up there and say, I'm going to make these 3 points, and just do 3. Don't tell me that there's 4. Just fold it into 3, okay? You can do it. You can do it. We're all bad at math anyhow by the time you graduate law school, so just make 4 3, okay? I'm going to argue these 3 points and then lay them out, 1, 2, 3. And I can promise you, if you do that at the top of an oral argument and one of my colleagues just needs to ask a question about number 2, I'm going to circle back to 3 for you. I got you on that. And some of my other colleagues will too. But organize your oral argument like that. Concede if there's some issue that has come up in the briefing or while you're prepping for oral argument and you realize it is just a weak argument, concede. And be able to walk in there with your best argument. Because we ask all the time, you've given me 3 theories here. What's your best one? What's the best case scenario for you? And then know what you want as a holding. You'd be surprised how many times people come in and will say, okay, if I'm the justice assigned to write this opinion, what is it that you want me to say? And they haven't they're thinking too big, and they're thinking about their job and not our job. And we want you to think about our job and make our job easier. Yeah. I'm speaking for myself.
Chief Justice, I'll keep this brief. I know we have a minute left. I'm a 2L here. My name's Carly. You mentioned earlier about your values and I guess having a voice in what you do. Is there anybody who's kind of been an inspiration to you in not only finding those values and that voice, but keeping it when I know it can be incredibly difficult to kind of rely back on those foundations?
Yeah, I mean, I think about how to stay. I think about how to stay motivated. I think about how to be a good leader. I think about the voice that I want to have all the time. I gotta tell you that my two biggest sources of inspiration are my two kids. They have been warriors. They have seen me through elections. They have we've seen each other through other circumstances, our own turbulent times. When I'm not sure what to do, I think about them and what would be best for them. I also read a lot. I read a lot about communication. I just finished a book called Super Communicators. I don't know if it shows. I read a lot about. I listen to a lot of legal podcasts. I read some law books. I also try to make sure I take a step away from my job and do things that make me happy, which is being outside, biking, running, hiking, anywhere, in Wisconsin, or being at a sport event. I mean, just having the opportunity to have some downtime is really important. So I guess I'll read and listen to just about anything. It doesn't really answer your question, but those are kind of the genres that I'm interested in.
Well, I want to thank you for giving your time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And I mean that. I know my colleague Hillary knows as well. It's not easy to get people to come and just open themselves up to an audience and answer questions. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.